Hey guys, it's Dr. Scott.
And Dr. Shiloh. Welcome back.
We're here with LA
Not so
Confidential.
Are we doing that at the top now?
I don't know what we're doing. I was just talking to Shiloh about how unbelievably, annoyingly hot it is. This is the time of year where all I want to do is stay in a dark, air-conditioned room.
Here we go again, talking about the weather.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll stop. What have you been up to, Dr. Shiloh? What's going on?
Oh my God, we're having a slumber party this week.
I know. Shiloh's staying at my house.
I'm going to some training at UCLA, and there's no way I'm driving 2 hours there and 2 hours home. So
that's crazy.
I'm crashing here for a few nights, which makes it awesome. Thank you.
In this absolutely cluttered guest room of a podcast studio.
That's okay. That's good. Maybe I'll have some inspiration tonight. I'll think of something for future episodes.
I hope my action figures don't come to life and strangle you in the middle of the night.
I just noticed your Reagan.
Oh, you never? Yeah.
I never saw your little pop. What do they call them?
Funko Pop.
Funko
Pops.
Pops.
That from last fall when Al came over and did our Exorcist episode.
Right.
Yeah, like it's a Funko Pop Reagan, and she's got puke all over her little dress.
Yay!
Anyway, so what have we been up to? We have been up to a lot. We have some enormous news coming out, and we're like sitting with bated breath on whether or not we can announce it. But we will sit on it.
We'll sit on it.
It's great news, folks.
Because
We're
there's
really
kind of
excited.
two things that are tied together. So let's just wait.
Yeah. So by the
but-
time this episode airs, we may have like a little thing going on, a little tandem or a little tag at the end that announces it. Yeah.
But we're trying to put together a couple things in LA, also like live events to come to. So just stay tuned to our social media for that. But gosh, I think we're going to have a lot between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, we're actually
doing.
really busy. I mean, that was one of the conversations we had as we're putting the brakes on things because we got a lot of traveling to do spring through early summer next year. So we're going to shut it down and just make sure we're recording.
Right.
We got one event a month for the next 3 months.
Pretty much.
As well as recording.
Pretty much. But we're going to try and get away to the mountains next weekend, Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll record something then if we have time to.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
We can find a horrible crime up there to talk about.
I found a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have been doing a lot of stuff. I went to an FBI training on threat assessment, which was amazing. That was really, really good. That was a FBI guy from Orange County that had some really interesting information on incels. You know, it's this whole... It's funny that we were kind of on the leading edge of talking about it because more and more people are becoming aware. And also in the world of threat assessment, it's becoming a real big deal.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah. And then week before last, I got to go for a whole half a day. I'll try not to get political about it. Instead of the whole week of the ATAP conference in Anaheim, which is the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. But I lucked out. The day I went, I had 3 back-to-back kick-ass presentations that were great.
So they also talked about incels there, right?
Yeah, there was this really, I had never heard of this guy before, and I'll put his name up on our notes, but he's a forensic psychiatrist from Michigan, and he really... The stuff that he presented would be another episode for us. In fact, I think we really should think about talking with him.
Sure.
Because he used some data where grad students went in and basically put all of the discussion boards, like thousands of pages of incel discussion boards, into a linguistic algorithm program that connected, first it located all of the keywords that were repeated the numbers of times, and then the words that were related to them. It's almost like a computer version of what Fitz did when he caught the Unabomber, is like looking at all these linguistic samples and how they connect to each other. So that's super cool.
Really interesting. What else what else did you see with the topics that day? 2 examples of school shootings that were just brutal. There was one here that happened several years ago in Oxnard, and I mean, you know what? I don't even want to go into a rabbit hole. It was fantastic. We might talk about it in the future, but I'll totally get distracted. What have you been doing? You're going to a training all week. What's the training about? Yeah, I know I talked about this last year. God, I can't believe it's been a year. But one of the FBI's behavioral analysis trainings that they do annually here in Southern California. So they have a lot of the profilers come out. and do case studies or talk about techniques. And it's just, I've been going to this training on and off probably like 15 years. And it's my favorite. It's like the thing I wait around for every year. Your partner's there and you're not. But it's kind of cool. There's a lot of people there that I know from like various avenues of my life, which is kind of weird. But it's cool to catch up and just go, like, have a full week to just soak in knowledge is the best. And I had like just it was a very challenging week for my unit this last week. So it's nice just to like sit and listen and soak it up and not have to do clinical services for a little bit. And so, yeah. I'm looking forward to what they have the rest of the week. Today was day one, so.
That's probably something we should talk about in a future episode. I mean, how we touched on it in our episode about Columbine, about vicarious trauma
and resiliency.
But it's not only us that work in the more sort of extreme, hardcore end of this type of work with mental health. It's even people who work in private practice have vicarious trauma through listening to, the horrific stories of the people that come to them for services. I think I'll plot out an episode in the future about self-care and how even as grad students, Jesus, there were times I was trying to finish my dissertation and I was on the floor, like, what have I done? Mm-hmm. What have I done? Yeah. My life is over.
I was interviewed by a journalist last week for an article, the reason he was talking to me was about vicarious trauma for people who work in the realm of sex offenders. His article might have to take a different angle, so it's on hold right now. It was supposed to come out this last week, but if that comes out, I'll let you guys know as well, so you can find that in print.
That sounds cool.
Well, in print, on the World Wide Web.
On the intertubes. So, hey, folks, just a heads up. So there's, we are relatively primitive here in our recording capacity, and it's Southern California. It's 7:39 in the evening, and it's still 98 degrees right now. So all of the air conditioners are running, and there's nothing I can do about the sound outside in the alley. So
the air conditioners of Los Angeles. You're hearing that running right now.
So, hey, what are we talking about this week? What's going on? Did I do any research?
Probably not, but that's totally okay. I feel like I'm going to sort of hijack this one because
you did a lot.
I did a lot, but so I'm just driving to work, catching up on my podcasts, and one of our favorites that we've talked about before, and we've played their promos before, is Nordic True Crime.
Oh God, her voice is hypnotic.
It is the best.
Yeah,
and still hands down best theme music. So, but she did an episode on how the term Stockholm Syndrome was coined, and she highlighted that case. And I thought, Stockholm Syndrome, as someone who is now trained as a crisis negotiator, I've never really done a deep dive on Stockholm Syndrome, like the actual syndrome itself. And it was super interesting to listen to her talk about the case and where it all started. But I thought we need to do a deep dive.
I completely agree with you. I think, and in fact, I even found an article, because I had the same experience. It's like, well, we talk about it all the time as if it's this thing and it's this legitimized thing with standardized criteria, and there isn't any. There's 4 bullet points that we'll go over.
It depends who you're looking at.
Exactly. It depends on who you're talking about. But I found a phenomenal research article in EBSCOhost, which is one of the data portals that professionals have to research, to have access to research journals. And I went, I went as broad as possible, and I got a sociology publication that talked about the vernacular and how actually even just the title Stockholm Syndrome in itself became a meme.
Right.
And it gathered meaning over the years that never really had that much to do with the original incident, and it's been
academic backing,
none at all.
Nothing.
And it's been applied to all sorts of like, there's a list of the top 15 best movies about Stockholm Syndrome. 12 of them are not about Stockholm Syndrome. They're about abuse. They're just abuse.
Right.
So we're going to touch on that as much as we can.
Yeah, so our topic is Stockholm Syndrome. So we're going to try and cover a few things, including, of course, a few gems of movies that we have found that we're going to talk about. So again, I just want to cite Nordic True Crime as if you want a super intense just layout of the whole original crime, then go and listen to their episode. But essentially, so this starts in Stockholm, Sweden in 1973 when, and you're going to have to bear with me with a lot of these Scandinavian names. I'm going to try and channel my Scandinavian roots and pronounce these correctly. But so essentially this guy, Clark Olofsson, think Olaf and then son.
You're actually going to tell me that's the one you had the most problems with. We have, like, the rest of the names are like IKEA furniture, and you were struggling with Olofsson.
No, I'm
Come
not
on.
struggling with it, but the other guy, his partner, the last name is Olsen. So I'm differentiating.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's going to get very confusing. Okay.
Like IKEA furniture. You're terrible. Okay, so Clark Olofsson he's just a bad dude. He's got a long, violent rap sheet starting in childhood. I mean, he escaped from juvenile incarceration. He escaped from adult prison. He was present during a robbery where a cop was killed, escaped from prison after that 8-year sentence, fled to the Canary Islands, caught again, escaped again, and then eventually sent away for like 6 years for a bank robbery. And in one of these prison stints, he meets this guy, Jan Olsen, whom Clark Olofsson sort of becomes obsessed with him and sort of starts looking up to him, and he's like a mentor.
Are you going to keep that accent? Or every time it's going to be like every time you say the name, you're going to say it like Mrs. Olsen from the coffee commercials?
Shut up! I'm not even want to look at you during this episode. Okay, you're dead to me. Okay. All right, so you're taking me off track here. So Clark is looking up to Jan. They do this prison sentence together, and Jan is still in prison, and Clark is out. And Clark decides to walk into this bank near Stockholm, Sweden, on August 23rd, 1973, in the morning. And he walks in with a long wig and sunglasses and a cowboy hat and a submachine gun and dynamite, and basically shoots some rounds into the air and says, "Let's get this party started." And it basically takes 4 bank workers hostage, 3 women, 1 man. A cop shows up just responding to the silent alarm, and he ends up shooting him, kind of is taken by surprise that this cop shows up and shoots that cop in the hand. And so the cops back off at that point and sort of surround the bank. So he is in there with these 4 hostages. He turns on the radio immediately. And this is like the first televised and big news coverage happening to crime in progress in Stockholm. So this is like everyone is tuned in.
Wow.
And this is 10 o'clock in the morning. And the media plays a big part in this because that's where a lot of this just kind of goes off the rails.
So this was really a lot of firsts.
This is a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
It's negotiating. It's, I mean, really crisis negotiations weren't born until the 70s in New York. So, nice little nonviolent Stockholm, Sweden is like, what the hell is happening? And he was actually, I think he was faking an American accent for a while. So they thought, is this guy an American? Because this is like an American movie, right? So it was just a lot of confusion and just unprecedented in this part of the world. So here's his ransom demands. He wants 3 million Swedish kron. He wants a getaway car. He wants vests, helmets, additional weapons. And he wants his buddy, Olofsson, to be released from prison and brought to him.
Wow.
And so their plan is that they are going to then leave in this escape vehicle with all this money and these vests and these guns and take the hostages with them to ensure their safety, so the cops don't, shoot up the car or whatever, and then get away and sail away to France or something at some point. So this is all playing out on live television. The ordeal lasts 6 days. The police actually meet every single one of the demands, including bringing Jan from prison to the bank. And so this turns into this, they're obviously co-conspirators at this point, carrying out this new crime. But the police stop short of saying you can leave with the hostages. They absolutely say you cannot do that.
Okay.
So they're not bowing to the demands of the negotiators and the police aren't bowing to that last demand of the hostage takers. And by day 2, the police were able to get microphones drilled into the building and sort of hear a lot of what was going on. And the hostages and the captors were on a first name basis by day 2. And for whatever reason, because police over there don't have a lot of experience in this, they start thinking that this is a strange thing. Why are the hostages not being more defiant? Why are they on a first name basis with these people that are obviously violent? And sort of the wheels start turning in the direction of, okay, what's going on here? So a news reporter calls into the bank and is on the phone with 23-year-old Kristen Enmark. She is a female, clerk typist at the bank. And she's on the phone with him, and at some point they actually patch in the prime minister to speak to her. So she tells the prime minister, we want to leave. We're disappointed that you won't let us leave with the captors. They have a plan. We trust them. She says, I fully trust both of them. They've been very nice. If the police attack, they're going to cause our death. And this is all broadcast live on the air because the original phone call is with this news anchor.
Right.
So this is all just out there unfolding for the public. Again, this goes on several more days. They eventually get hunkered down in the vault area of the bank, but the captors will tie ropes around the hostages and sort of let them walk out, get some air. Some point, they actually trust the women to go use the restroom by themselves. And each time the women come back, the police were actually in an upstairs level above. So they're in the same building, actually inside the building. So they could have run up the stairs to the police, and they knew this because the police were coming up and down the stairs, checking on their well-being, that sort of thing. It wasn't like they were so totally blocked out of the building altogether. But they sort of stick with the plan of, we hope the negotiations work out, they'll let us leave with them, and or our captors will let us go. So the police don't only have microphones, but they end up putting cameras where they drill into the ceiling of the vault. The captors shoot through the holes and shoot at the cops. So there's still this ongoing violent behavior. One detective, I think, gets hit. But
up until this point, no captors have been harmed, right?
No hostages.
Sorry.
Right. No hostages have been harmed. And then at some point, they are going to fill the room with gas, but that gets leaked over the radio. So what the hostage takers do is they tie nooses around all the necks of the hostages and sort of sit. They're standing, but they say if you put gas in here and they pass out, they're going to die. So it's going to be the police causing their death. So they use that as a tactic. Doesn't work. The cops are able to gas everybody and end up getting them out of there. So when they are leaving the bank, the hostages, they have all come to. So they stop the gas in just enough time to totally, have them pass out or have the situation with the nooses work. But the hostages get up and essentially surround their captors to keep them safe and walk out. And then when they're taking them into custody, they're essentially tearing them apart from each other. The hostages are crying. They're saying, don't hurt them, that sort of thing is happening. So during the end of this ordeal and seeing it through, the police bring in this Swedish criminologist and psychiatrist who they kind of want to analyze both the behavior of the offenders, but the behavior of the victims as well to see what's going on here. So Niles Bourgeot, he is the psychiatrist that gets called in, and he starts. It's really interesting because he starts rationalizing the behavior of the offenders from a model that we call the rational actor model. So basically, he's assuming that in the rational actor model, you assume that the decision maker is a rational person, where if they have sufficient information, they're deducing and predicting behavior. So he's kind of looking at this very rational view when he's talking about
very
the
black and white, and
very black and white,
according to like preconceived notions of human behavior in a certain setting, right?
Right.
Which is really wrong.
Because this is so dynamic and fluid.
Exactly. It's
and
completely different. It's an extraordinary situation.
It is. So he's sort of deducing the behavior of these criminals and making sense of it. And then he looks at these female victims and says they're completely acting irrational. He even goes so far as to say is that there was a sexual attachment to these perpetrators, and that's why these women are like out of their mind, and that led to the distrust of the police. So he kind of goes off the rails with his consultation, but the police kind of go with it, and he ends up coining the term Stockholm Syndrome. And Kristen Enmark is essentially the one that was on the phone. She's essentially the first person ever to be, quote unquote, diagnosed with this. And this really weighed heavy on her for decades. I mean, until, she was interviewed like 40 years after this, which would have been, bless you. I know you tried to be quiet.
I tried to be quiet. I'm sorry. It sounded like a duck being squeezed.
But for 40 years, she really felt something was wrong with her. And in doing our research, I found this salon.com story, and I didn't get much from the story, but I loved their subtitle to talking about this, and it said, Christine Enmark didn't act the way a hostage was supposed to act, and a new psychological disorder was born. And I thought, man, have we touched on that like so many times about parents with, missing kids not acting the way they're supposed to act. And I don't know, people going through trauma essentially is what it boils down to.
Right.
Aren't acting in a certain way.
Once again, going back to extraordinary situation and an individual with their own line of development and their own challenges. And I mean, as you're telling this, you provided with all this information too, so that we could go down separate rabbit holes on this. But it reminds me, as you're talking, about a good friend of mine who's a doctor was telling me about, I didn't realize how unbelievably expensive malpractice insurance is. I mean, for here in Southern California, for a general practitioner, it can be like $100,000 a year, which is just insane.
What?
I know, it's just insane. It's not all like that, but it can be up that high. But the reason I give that example is because, you hear a lot about malpractice and lawsuits, and I didn't realize this, but if a patient likes the doctor and the doctor actually does something that is negligent, odds are they will not pursue a lawsuit because they have positive feelings. This doctor's been taking care of me. Everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
Of course, I'm crippled now, or I can't have kids now, but he or she really didn't mean to do that to me. Whereas if they don't like them, they're like, hell yeah, sue them for everything.
Oh, that's really
interesting. So, I think it's akin to that of like, once you have shifted your perspective to the idea that this person is keeping me safe, whether it's a doctor who is negligent or a captor who maybe it's almost the stuff that I've read is leaning, if there is a sort of an agreement, it's that people are talking, the researchers are saying that this is like a almost like a biological imperative. Like
Right.
your primitive mind is taking over and you are latching on to anything that looks like it might be safe.
Sure. And it's going to get your needs met like a child with
Right.
a parent. Sure.
It's so interesting because you wonder, to me, this is one of those situations we talk about where I go, God, how would I act?
Right.
Like, would I hatch a plan? You know, I don't know if I would.
When they were allowing the women to use the restroom, they would say, if like the two of you don't come back or one of you doesn't come back, I'm going to kill this one, the third one. So there is this threat being made of harm to someone else. You know, are you going to risk that? Are you going to say, oh, fuck it, I'm out of here and run up the stairs when...
That's a hard thing to answer. I mean, it's a hard thing for me to answer.
Sure.
I know some people I don't know, because I think it's just hard to judge when you're not in that situation.
Right.
And we also, I don't know if everybody has this. I like to have sort of badass superhero fantasies about myself,
Sure.
which I'm not a badass at all. I'm not a superhero.
So you would
but you're
roundhouse the gun out of their hand.
Exactly. I'd totally
clearly.
Chuck Norris them, where I would just I'd pretend that I was melting in a puddle of tears, and when they came over, I'd gouge out their eyes with my thumbs. And then I'd be grossed out because I'd have eyeballs on my thumbs or something.
Ew. You'd pass out at that point.
I'm so grossed out.
There's a podcast called Memory Motel by Terrace Mickey. It hasn't been up and running for a while, but there's an interview with Kristen and Mark. And
Oh, wow.
essentially, this is 40 years later, but, she says, after all these years, I did what I needed to do to survive. They made me feel like something was wrong with me. When you label someone with a syndrome,
Oh, yeah.
that means that you're not well. And she says, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I'm actually proud of how I acted. And she really feels like they focus too much on her and the other women in a victim blaming sort of way.
Absolutely. It's
And
bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It's like,
Didn't look at all the players and all the
right,
dynamics.
and you know what it's coming from? It's coming from Freudian ideas about hysteria.
Yep.
The wandering uterus is just
Right.
driving those poor ladies crazy.
Oh my God.
They just can't control their lady parts.
So Frank Oshberg was a New York City psychiatrist, and he was a pioneer in trauma science. He authored the first book on PTSD. I think he was on the committee that literally coined the term post-traumatic stress disorder. And he's the one that started sort of more progressively using this term in areas of hostage situations, or looking at it a little bit later, like in 1978. But he defines Stockholm Syndrome as, quote, the unholy alliance between terrorists and captive, involving fear, distrust, or anger toward the authorities on the outside. So his is kind of two-pronged. There's this trust that happens, and then there is this distrust that happens of the authorities or the police that are trying to help. There's a movie that came out last year that I had not heard of it being made, but it's called Stockholm. And it stars Ethan Hawke and Noomi Rapace. It's terrible.
Oh, is it bad?
It's awful.
They're both great actors, but that's why we never heard of it.
I know.
Yeah, it must be terrible. Shoot.
But it's about the Stockholm case. I think it fell flat because it was very dramatized. I mean, they end up having sex the night before they all get released.
Of course,
and
as one does.
She doesn't care about her husband and two little children anymore, and just gonna have sex with this guy. But
sex on a grimy bank floor.
yeah,
That's just
on the
lovely.
vault floor. But I think it was good. It was trying to be a little bit comedic and sort of dark humor, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It was okay. It's on Amazon if you want to check it out. I think it was called The Captive or The Captor in Europe. It had a couple different names, but it's just Stockholm here. So you were sort of talking about the evolution of how this term has been used, and maybe we can talk about a little bit more psychological underlying concepts of it that you were also just sort of touching on. There's a lot of disagreement about the criteria.
Tons. There's tons of disagreement and not a lot of real research. In fact, this is one of those things that happens in any any qualitative area of research or science is when, this is always a bad indicator, is when there's so little actual statistical data that everything that's written just references itself. So it's like
so
the
there's
same
research that says there's no research.
Right. But now we're going to say what we think is happening, and then someone else cites that. And it's just this circle.
It was really frustrating.
Yeah, because it's really
this.
only about 10 legit articles that I could find.
Right.
And I was going through all of EBSCOhost, and I touched on briefly one of the other social sciences databases. But, you know, there's I really liked what was boiled down in a Scandinavian psychiatric journal, ACTA. And this was done, I think, in 2008 with several researchers, and
they looked at like 12 different studies,
right? Yeah. And here's the thing that they did a great job, is that they looked at all of the databases, PubMed, Embase, PsycInfo, Signal, and they compared everything that had been written down, and they found 12 research papers on Stockholm Syndrome that met criteria of at least it could not be ruled out as something else, right? Okay, and what they did, even with the conclusion that there's just not enough real research, is that they boiled it down into 4 summations. And one is that there's a problem that exists already with the term. So the term itself, Stockholm Syndrome, it's used in media sources to describe the positive bond a kidnapped victim develops towards their captor. So this is officially, whereas it started out with this bullshit asswipe psychologist who, you know, had a bias and was, you know, old school Freudian. It's almost like the Kitty Genovese story about bystander bias. It's like, that's not actually, I mean, that research ended up being kind of true, and we've proven it since then, but the original incident never happened that way.
Right.
And so it's the same thing here, is that we have now made it into something when the original source material is kind of corrupt in a way. But this is the term we use, is Stockholm Syndrome. Sure. So there's no validated diagnostic criteria for this. It hasn't been described. There's no existing literature that is of actual research value. It's very, very limited. And what does exist doesn't really support a solid, concrete parameters of a syndrome. And by the way, it's not in the DSM. You know, it's like they toss it around. It's not a real, I mean, it's a real thing, but it's not a statistically real thing.
So listen to this. This is just super weird coincidence. I was reading a child custody evaluation report last week, and for the child, the evaluating psychologist in the diagnosis put down ICD-10, which the ICD is, it's like the international version of the DSM for medical and psychiatric diagnoses.
So it's a code. It's a code and a label.
It's a code and
it's
a label.
It's used for billing too,
for
right?
billing, essentially. So this psychologist put down the code for post-traumatic stress disorder, and then in parentheses it said Stockholm Syndrome, a variant of PTSD. And I just some online references. I don't even have my ICD-10 anymore. I had one when it came out. Where is that thing? But online references showed it as a, quote, synonym for this code for PTSD.
Oh, that's
but
totally, but that's unethical.
I saw
you can't do that.
A report that's going to court.
Wow,
I just
that's
read it
really
last
bad.
week. So I think that's interesting. I couldn't find a whole lot that looked legit from online databases of the ICD-10. I think it's interesting to think about it as, you know, maybe not meeting each criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder as it is laid out in the DSM, but as a trauma stress reaction.
No, yes, right there. I'm completely with you. It's a trauma stress reaction, but I'm actually reeling. I wasn't aware that was happening, because PTSD And who's the woman on the British profiler that does coercive
Laura
control?
Richards.
Laura Richards is so great because she talks about in the UK, they're moving away from saying PTSD as a disorder because
Right.
it's labeling and it's marginalizing. So they're saying syndrome, and syndrome is actually a more apt descriptor because it describes a confluence of symptoms and symptomology. But for this, PTSD or PTSS
S.
is the result of trauma. If there is a Stockholm Syndrome, it is that trauma is resulting in behaviors, not necessarily long-term. Just because you hold on to long-term positive affect or positive,
Regard.
positive regard
Yeah.
for your captors,
Right.
that's not fitting any PTSD criteria.
No.
So why would you?
Well, and PTSD criteria doesn't talk about an interaction between two people either. I mean,
Right.
It's just a trauma and the symptoms.
So if you were that's just interesting to me. We should ask Nick and Jessa about this because if I was going to be the fantasy attorney that I think I can be when I listen to their podcast,
sure.
I would totally break that down and I would be saying, well, this is not a thing.
Right.
Explain this to me. How can you say it's PTSD when these two things are, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so they analyzed all the cases, the 4 common features that they could all agree on that they found evident in these 12 somewhat robust studies. I mean, robust is a exaggerated term. Each victim experienced direct threats. They were kept in isolation. They had an opportunity to quote unquote escape during their period of captivity, but they failed to use it. And they showed sympathy for their captors. So those are the 4 things that they were able to agree on. But then the huge consideration is that even though they've identified all these patterns, there's no way to tell that all the patterns that are recognized are not hugely because of bias.
Right.
Because what I find interesting is that looking back at these cases of supposed Stockholm Syndrome, even the precipitating event itself was really monocultured. Right? So would we see that in today's diverse culture? I don't think you would.
I don't think you would either. Let me interject here just to give you the components that I was given a bunch of materials by some friends from the FBI in their hostage negotiation unit. And so the FBI in their literature has 3 prongs they call them the components of Stockholm Syndrome, which they're also on the fence about if this is a thing or not. So 1, hostages have positive feelings for their captors. 2, victims show distrust and anger towards authorities. And 3, the perpetrators display positive feelings towards the victims as they begin to see them as humans. So it's sort of taking those 2 prongs that we had at first, and it's also being reciprocated by the captors.
Well, I find that very interesting because I'm sorry I was not a part of that conversation or if you have a chance, go back and ask about this because one of the sociological article that came up in the Sociological Quarterly that I found really impactful was about Yvonne Ridley. Are you familiar with Yvonne Ridley? She was a British journalist, and she converted to Islam after having been released by her Taliban captors. So back in 2001, she was reporting in situation in Afghanistan, and she was captured and, kind of brought over. But let me, from all of our data about, the religious sect Islam militants who were doing capturing, they weren't nice.
Yeah.
They were not
is it
nice
convert to
at
Islam
all.
Or get beheaded?
Right.
Are those
And
your 2
so,
choices?
Yeah. So, even if she did have a trauma-based reaction that said, this is the way I survive, I'm going to completely integrate this into my system because I got to stay alive, and then it stays with her, that's still not meeting the exchange, the positive countertransference of feeling between the captor and the hostage.
I doubt that her captors are like, oh yeah, she's great. We see her as a human.
Oh yeah, I doubt that completely. So the
FBI has a database for all their hostage situations, where basically they just sort of have different items of behavior and how it resulted and interventions that were used. It's called HOBIS is the database, and 73% of hostages showed no signs of Stockholm Syndrome.
Right.
With whatever criteria they have.
Which
I didn't get a chance.
That's an enormous percentage,
yeah.
right?
Of course,
I mean, that's so
course.
significant.
Yeah. They said that a lot of times the captives can be frustrated with law enforcement, but it doesn't mean that it's developing into a syndrome, which doesn't exist.
I think that actually can be said of the general public that doesn't understand the parameters within which law enforcement has to work. Because you and I happen to work in that world, even if we don't necessarily agree from a mental health perspective with the decisions that are made, we understand that they're operating within set guidelines. And then there are a lot of people walking around blissfully unaware of what is being done to keep them safe.
Sure.
And I say that as a complete hippie commie.
Oh, well, ignorance is bliss, and
yeah, exactly.
Good for those people that are living there. There are some, I found some papers out of Scandinavia, actually University of Stockholm, that take some really progressive feminist views in that Stockholm Syndrome was really developed out of the government's need to explain how this shit show in Stockholm went so wrong. And guess who was the easy person to blame? These victims for acting the way that they were acting.
So it's basically the Salem witch trials. It's finding a victim to make so that we can have understanding of this.
So, they need to maintain a masculine image and concept of protection and control. And a good way to do that is by gendering victimhood through this crisis narrative and crisis response of these women. So it's interesting.
I find that fascinating, and I think, and it also takes me back to my earlier point of that I don't know if it's possible for that to happen in this way again, because hopefully we move forward with a more progressive view and a more egalitarian view of women. Like I know a lot of women that if they're put in that situation, I feel sorry for their captors because they're going to be, they're not going to fall for that. Then again, there are other factors that, I think that one of the things that you and I, we haven't talked about it yet, but we both read this in our various articles and our research. I mean, you've touched on it, is the idea of demonizing the police or demonizing the people that are trying to fix the situation. And how do you do that? I mean, it's some of the movie examples I have example that really well. But so even if you don't have necessarily a homogenized group of all white people, all white bred women and men, and the cops outside, even if it's more diverse, if you can make the people outside look bad, then you're going to have more of a tendency to get sympathy by your captors. Of your captors.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been, you talked about this psychiatrist, the Swedish psychiatrist being really old
Dr.
school.
Asshole?
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Dr. Asshole?
That guy. What kind of IKEA furniture is that?
That's my Swedish chef.
Of him being very Freudian, but I feel like if he had looked at it from sort of an attachment, but like you were talking about before, just how do I stay alive? Who's getting my needs met right now? Who is telling me when to eat, what I can eat, when I can go to the bathroom, when I can sleep.
And I don't really know this woman next to me, except we've been here for 3 days, and she's told me she has a child, and now my captor has told me that if I don't come back from the fucking bathroom, they're going to shoot her in the head, and so I'm going to be responsible for that little girl's mother dying.
I mean, that's a healthy ego just to survive, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's a healthy functioning ego on a primitive level, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's basically hitting one of the 4 F's. It's, fight or flight.
Yeah.
Feed or fornicate.
Right. Well, if you're watching the movie, it's fornicate.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
So there is there's a couple other in the world of hostage negotiations, crisis negotiations, sort of different veins or I don't know, like different versions of this in a couple different situations. Law enforcement encourages bonding if it actually creates a bond so the perpetrator will not hurt the hostages. So talk again, like sort of talking about them as people and talking about them as humans with families to sort of develop empathy.
Like the beginning of Silence of the Lambs.
It's not the beginning, it's like the middle. But
Oh, is it really? I thought it was close to the beginning. Oh no, because she's been okay.
when they kidnap her.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't inhibit negotiations or the tactics of the situation. There's also something called the Lima Syndrome, when perpetrators sympathize with the hostages. It's overwhelmingly the other way. And that comes from a situation in Lima, Peru in 1996, when hundreds of hostages were taken at the Japanese embassy. And the hostage takers, I don't know if it's because there were so many hostages in numbers, there were hundreds of them, that it was just overwhelming and they started empathizing with them after a while. It sounds like a lot to control, just as a situation, and I could see how a perpetrator could let that get out of control really easily. But there's also broader and expanding use of the term. I have seen it used with other victim-perpetrator relationships, whether it's sex trafficking, incest victims, intimate partner violence, cult members, prisoners of war, concentration camp prisoners. I mean, there's lots of different areas in which this sort of gets applied, which I think further dilutes this definition or criteria that doesn't exist. I feel like we're talking in circles here a little bit, but I think it's good to talk about it.
I think it is. I think it's educational. I mean, it's informing for us as professionals and for hopefully for our listeners for the idea, because I don't necessarily think it's the greatest thing that I relate it to, just throwing a mental illness label on someone, arbitrarily without understanding the long-term and chronic effects that even putting a label on someone can have. If we throw around this term and we let it take on its own life over decades, it's been 40 years now.
Yeah.
And it's so sort of integrated into the culture, and yet it's not understood, it's not validated, it's not in many ways a real thing. That's harmful.
I agree.
Right?
I agree. I think it is more of urban legend, something that we throw around as a term that, like, it when you see it, but there's no real criteria to it. So we thought we would talk about a couple different cases and films in which some people apply it and just see what we think.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's talk. We'll talk about the two. We'll talk about several cases, but I want to start with the two big ones. One that's a clear example, and one is absolutely is not, and isn't even. It's only been bandied about a couple of times that it happened. But the first one, and probably really one of the most famous here in the U.S., is Patty Hearst. And Patricia Hearst she's now 65 years old, I think. She was living in Berkeley at the time. She was in college, and this was in 1974.
So it's only a year after Stockholm.
Right. Okay. But ironically, it's a year after Stockholm, and this actually was a Stockholm example. I mean, it really pretty much fits all the criteria. And if you're not familiar with the Hearst family, the Hearst family has been around for generations, and it's an incredibly wealthy and powerful family that was in publishing and all sorts of industry in the early 20th century, all through the 20th century. Patty Hearst was living in an apartment in Berkeley, and she was kidnapped by a left-wing terrorist group, which is a very rare thing to begin with. I mean, a left-wing terrorist group is not very... I mean, it's so far left that it's right-wing, basically. It's just a terror... And it's a terror group. But it was called the Symbionese Liberation Army. And her ordeal in capture lasted 19 months. And in that 19 months, she went from being captor, no, I mean, went from being hostage into an active member of the crimes that were being committed by this organization. And they were involved in some explosives. They were involved in a very famous bank robbery where Patty was captured on camera with a machine gun in a beret,
dressed like them,
acting like them.
If you guys are in LA, the LAPD Museum over in Highland Park has a really cool exhibit on this.
Yeah. So what I would say is interesting about this particular case, and I do also have to say I'm connected. I have like 3 degrees of separation from her. Never met her, probably never will. Have heard she's actually like an incredibly lovely woman, just like really down to earth. But what we do know now is that she was really led quite a sheltered life. She was a very wealthy young woman, with an incredible fortune behind her name. And she went to private schools. She had the best of everything. And I think that plays a part in it because she may really not have been exposed to a lot of the real world. I mean, not many people are at 19 or 20 years of age. Right. But for someone like her, sort of living this sheltered life with really no financial issues, and then she gets kidnapped by this organization. Now, they engage in actual brainwashing techniques. I mean, there was isolation, there was starvation, there were death threats. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, when she was finally rescued, I think she weighed around 87 pounds. She was almost
she kept
starving.
In a closet, essentially.
All of the torture techniques that they had available to them, they used on her. And but when you're brainwashing someone, or when you're trying to create that environment where you can bring someone over to your side, is that you use intermittent reinforcement. So in between all of that terrible treatment, she would then get treated nicely and complimented, and we're really worried about you. It's going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you. And then it would, cycle back into the abuse. So someone who's young and inexperienced, just really has their mind completely messed with. And the motives supposedly of the SLA at that time were opportunistic. Like, they had a hideout, or sort of their a lair, a supervillain, we call it a lair. She lived near it, and their main intent supposedly was to leverage some political influence that they felt the Hearsts had, which is probably a legitimate concern because the Hearsts were in publishing, to free 2 of their members who had been arrested for another crime. So, there were huge amounts of money involved at that time, like $400 million, which in today's money, 40 years later, would be an even more enormous sum.
Was that, you mean like ransom that they were asking for, or that was what she was worth?
Yeah, it's like, well, what would have they demanded that, oh God, what was it? It's that the Hearst family distribute $70 worth of food to every needy Californian. It was like a really ambiguous and weird sort of way out there plan, and that would have cost $400 million at the time.
Maybe it's the same person that wrote the John Benet Ramsey letter. Just outlandish stuff that
it's
couldn't even logistically be done.
Right. I want a green helicopter. But Hearst did, I think he took out a loan. I don't know why he needed to take a loan for $2 million, but he donated a huge sum of money to the Bay Area food banks, which supposedly made a big deal.
So I could see...
But they didn't release her. They didn't release her at that time.
We're talking 19 months versus 6 days, like in the Stockholm thing, or hours, which some of the others... over a long period of time, and if you using the term brainwashing, that when I said we sort of know it when we see it, that's what I think of. Long period of time, a lot of these brainwashing techniques being used so that the person literally changes their entire view to align with their captors, not just I'm going to play nice to survive.
Right.
Which is how I feel like it got misdiagnosed at the beginning.
Right. So, so in later interviews with Patty Hearst, she said that she was initially held for a week in a dark closet, blindfolded, tied up, and constantly threatened with death, just over and over, constantly threatened with death. And she was sometimes let out for meals, but blindfolded, and then had to sit there and listen to them having political discussions. So eventually, and then what I'm going to describe here is what we call scaffolding. So they're laying a foundation while they're brainwashing her. Brownwashing. I hope I'm going to edit that out. Yeah, that sounds gross. While they're brainwashing her, they're laying a foundation for the only thing that she has any relief from being tied up is these political discussions. And then her only access to any sort of thing when she's alone is they give her a flashlight where she can sit in the dark and she can read their propaganda.
So the nice deeds revolve around what they're brainwashing her.
Exactly.
These
so
ideas,
the nice deeds are just
ideals.
relief from the bad things,
Right.
and sort of what we consider neutral. And even she says in one of the later interviews is the main captor has said, like, look, the war council has decided, well, we're thinking about killing you, or you can join us, and we haven't really decided, and you better start thinking about just figuring out which way you want to go. And she was like, well, if I'm going to survive, I'm going to have to go along with this.
Okay.
And she said that she after that had happened for a period of time, they finally took her blindfold off so that she could see. Up until this time, she was only allowed the flashlight once she'd gotten back in the closet, so she couldn't identify anyone. There were other things besides getting weapons training. At this point, she basically was told that she had sexual duties to her captors as well. So there's all different layers. Like we said, scaffolding, of
Right.
just now upping the pressure and integrating her more tightly into their movement. And she supposedly changed her name to Tanya, was involved in a bank robbery. And, she ended up doing time for her crimes because she did participate in these robberies,
Mm-hmm.
and her sentence was commuted by President Carter, and then she was given a full pardon by President Clinton, I believe. But she's been pretty upfront with, this is what happened. She doesn't minimize it at all. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I really do feel like that even though there's controversy and there's still people that hold out today that there was no brainwashing, there was no Stockholm Syndrome, that she was given a battery of tests. She had dropped to 87 pounds. It's funny, I keep wanting to say 187 pounds.
Because 87 is so unbelievable.
Exactly, because 87 is so unbelievable. And when you see the pictures that were taken of her at the time, she looks almost skeletal. But she was evaluated by a psychologist in 75, and her affect was so flat, and that they said that there was probably an estimate of 20 points lowering her IQ score.
Wow.
As a result of all of this. She had major gaps, not only in her memory of what was going on while she was a captive, but in her previous life as well. And that took years to come back.
She's just starting to shut down.
Completely shut down.
Wow.
And that's just mental. At that
the
weight.
lack of stimulation,
Yeah.
except for what they were doing.
And at that weight, for a grown woman, she could have died
sure.
of renal failure
Yeah.
just immediately. It could have happened. So,
that's probably the closest we're going to get to this concept of Stockholm Syndrome.
I would say that one. I feel like the Afghani journalist captive,
Right,
I think
right.
that's an interesting case. And then there's another one that definitely fits it, and that was, oh God, what's her name? It is...
Is that the Stan case?
It's the woman in Germany that was kidnapped. She's kidnapped and held in a guy's basement and raped for years. And when she was rescued, it had been so many years.
Yeah.
And she didn't even have as much freedom as J.C. Dugard. But she even admits today that she has not recovered from it. And when she got rescued, he killed himself. He put himself in front of a train because he now has positive transference to her. His only emotional support is gone. And then she moved back into the house that she had been captive in for years, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get that name and put it up. I'm so sorry I'm blanking on it. But I wanted to move on just for time's sake.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Smart, who...
I hear this term thrown around all the time when people talk about it.
It just doesn't fit.
Smart.
And by the way, please, listeners, just go online and listen to Elizabeth's TED Talk about resiliency and trauma and listen to her interviews. It's an unbelievable story. I'm sure if you're listening to us, you probably are at least somewhat familiar with it, but just a brief overview. How many times do we say that?
Can I time out for a second?
Yeah.
No, not really, but like tangent. Remember we were at the True Crime Podcast Festival and we were doing the trivia crime show with Rebecca from Yellow Tape? I don't know how many glasses of wine we were in, but I remember when Tim from Missing Maura Murray was up there and he went to answer a question. He said Elizabeth Smart, and I'm like, no, that's wrong, because it was actually about the Black Dahlia.
Right.
I was all angry, like, he's wrong.
You were really worked up.
Shut up, woman in the front row. You know it's Elizabeth Short.
And by the way, I cannot wait to the next festival.
I know.
It's going to be a blast. We had such a good time. But Elizabeth Smart in 2002 at age 14 in a sort of a suburban neighborhood of Salt Lake City. She's from a Mormon family, very heavily Mormon population. It's actually like a horror movie. It's so unbelievable because and as a parent, and I'm not a parent, but the idea that someone fucking broke into your second story window of your house and kidnapped one of your daughters
out of her bed
while her sister is sleeping in bed next to her.
Insane.
I mean, it's completely insane. So
all sense of security shattered.
Just completely shattered. And talk about somebody that was completely innocent. Like, I mean, and she's the first one to admit that her family at that time was extremely religious and very conservative about their religious beliefs. One thing that's funny, I always find it funny when extraordinary people say that there was nothing interesting about me. I mean, she even describes herself, and I think in her TED Talk, she's like, I was just this normal girl. There was nothing special about her. I'm like, no, she wasn't. She was incredibly, incredibly accomplished. She was a wonderful student. Wow. She was beloved by her classmates. She played the harp like wonderfully. Like they have all these tapes of her playing the harp.
Oh, wow.
That's a fucking hard instrument to play. So I don't think she was trying to be like faux self-deprecating. I think that she just doesn't really have an idea of kind of how amazing she is. But anyway, this asshole guy, David Mitchell, who is clearly on the verge of psychosis, certainly a full-blown narcissist, as well as a couple of other things, kidnapped her at knife point, threatening while he laid next to her in her bed, basically, I will kill everyone in this house. I will kill you. I will kill your sister. I will kill your little brother. So clearly he had been stalking her. He had been, scoping her out. He gets her out. Her little sister was actually awake and was terrified because she heard the death threats. Mm-hmm. So Mitchell walks her for over 5.5 hours into the mountains so that they go up over a mountain range and down into another valley to where they meet with his wife, who is a lovely piece of work, Wanda Barzy. And suffice it to say is there was no Stockholm Syndrome here. She was raped on a daily basis, multiple times a day. Sometimes Wanda, the wife, would sit and watch it. He had a religious delusion that he was a prophet, and he had this marriage ceremony with her and just subjected this poor girl to horrific things. And even to the point where when they went into town and they were wearing like sort of, religious robes, they would make her and Wanda would wear veils over their faces in order to disguise them. And he constantly kept the threats up as I will kill you, I will kill everyone.
And this is what people point out when they sort of try and affiliate Stockholm Syndrome with it, is that she had these opportunities to flee or tell someone when they're out in public.
Right, and those weren't opportunities.
These threats
they
are
weren't,
just
because
always
she
there.
she talks about her internal dialogue all during that time of how terrified she was that her, and she was very close with her family, but super close with her sister and her little brother, and just terrified that something was going to happen to them.
Right.
And it wasn't until but I think one thing, when it all went down, when she was rescued, and they were rescued on the street because a very thorough cop, knew something was up. And I think he even says in his interviews that there was something off about her body language. That he understood this person is scared. So crazy old man in robes is crazy, banged up, trashed older woman looks crazy, and here's this terrified, trembling teenager that's clearly too young to be their daughter.
Right.
They're too old to have a daughter this age. So he finally, there are wonderful excerpts from her audiobook online on free. I think it's on CBS, where she did several interviews for all the networks, basically. But she reads from her audiobook, and she talks about this sort of meta-narrative going on in her head while the cop is talking softly to her. And she can see that Mitchell is glaring at her, and she was so terrified by the glare in his eyes, and she knew he was going to kill. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill my family if I say anything. And finally, and there was, I think, in one of the reports, she was so scared. She said, "I'm not that girl. I'm not that girl," which of course tipped the cop off to go, "I want to talk to you. Are you Elizabeth? Are you Elizabeth? Your family really misses you." And as soon as he hooked into the family, she just, started sobbing and broke down. So there was some reports that as Mitchell and Barzy were pulled away, she was, screaming or yelling, "Please don't hurt them. Please don't hurt them." She may have said that. She may not. It may have been part of some traumatic bonding.
But compassion is not Stockholm Syndrome either.
No, absolutely. That's a good differentiation right there.
And I think that's what we see over and over again in these mislabeled situations.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan now, and I've gotten her audiobook because I want to listen to it.
Yeah.
And please listen to her TED Talk. Please read her Wikipedia page. It's very well done. And there are great links there. And, once again, this is, with all due respect to our field of mental health, David Mitchell and his wife, Wanda Barzy, didn't spring out of nothing. These two were clearly mentally ill and should have been getting treatment, or should have been watched. They should have been on somebody's radar. And there's no telling actually what crimes they committed before. And I think she's out on probation and or parole, which I don't think either of them should have gotten out.
Right. Did you get to watch any other films?
I did. So
do tell.
Here's the thing, is that when we talked about Stockholm Syndrome as a possible topic, what came up for me was a movie, and I thought, wasn't there a movie that was sort of about Stockholm Syndrome?
Are we circling back to The Exorcist a little bit?
Kind of, it is. And I was like, it was Linda Blair, and who was I couldn't remember who the male lead was. Linda Blair, in the 70s after, and it was it's a movie of the week. It's a movie of the week. So, of course, the magic of Google, I found it immediately.
I know. I could not believe when you sent me the poster.
It's so amazing. And here's the only thing that's incredibly disappointing, because I don't want anybody to get their hopes up, is, well, the name of the movie is Sweet Hostage. So right there, just a little vomit inducing. But there are so many old like movies of the week that are posted on YouTube that you can stream, and somebody has posted it up numerous times and it's been taken down.
Really?
But the trailers are there and full scenes are there, and you've just got to watch it. So it's based on a novel that was actually quite different. It was actually, the novel was probably more of it was about a mentally ill individual, the captor, and he ends up kidnapping a young woman, and they end up, it's an abusive relationship at first, but they have this traumatic bonding. But of course, in the 70s, you make a TV movie about it for Friday night, and clearly, I mean, most people don't realize, like, you know, you don't have streaming television. We didn't have streaming television back there. It's like, if there was a movie event on television, you were going to watch it. So all these things I just couldn't remember, except that, like,
what year did it come out?
It came out, I think it was 74. Like, hold on, let me get to my notes. I know, that's how much I remember. Okay, so
you got Stockholm, you have Patty Hearst, and then you have Sweet Hostage.
Right. Okay. So there's so many things wrong with this. It's just so
and who's
wrong.
Who's the male lead?
Martin Sheen.
Crazy.
Martin Sheen, when he's like 29 years old. He's playing 29 years old. He's like skinny and muscular and tan
hair.
with like the Bobby Goldsboro haircut that's like in his face.
I don't know who that is, but okay.
You wouldn't know.
Go ahead.
Anyway, so, and this is the thing that's also problematic, is that she was 16 years old at the time. So it's not like, it's one of these things where we realize, like, oh, wow.
This is like our conversation on the stalking episode.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Or, you know, like, you love the movie Ghostbusters. The original Ghostbusters is so great. And then you rewatch it and it's like, oh, Harold Ramis's character drugs women in bars because that's the only way he can get laid, because he rapes them. You're like, oh,
what the fuck?
Right, you know, but
happening?
But now we didn't think about it back then.
Let's gather the family around for this Friday night movie.
Exactly. So the whole premise is that this young woman's she is lives in, you know, a rural part of the U.S. Her mother has passed away, and her dad is she's responsible for taking care of the farm. So it's like she's raising chickens, she's doing all this stuff. And it's Linda Blair. She's 16. She's totally adorable. But the truck breaks down. So she's hitchhiking, and this, you know, guy in a tank top picks her up, and he's totally charming. And of course, they're both. Linda Blair at that time was an okay actress. She was great, and she wasn't a great teen actress, but she was okay. Martin Sheen was a natural, like, really great actor. I bet he's completely embarrassed to see this rape fantasy done now. Ugh. But so she gets he picks her up and is going to take her home, and then she's talking about how bad life is on the farm, and like, oh, my dad, if I leave, he'd come after me with a shotgun. I kind of run the farm. I do everything, blah, blah, blah. And he's talking, you know, sort of quoting Shakespeare and Thoreau and all these writers. And he's like, you need to live. You need to live your life. Well, mister, my turn's right up here. And then you see this dramatic, his boot goes into the gas pedal and it floors it. Hey, mister, that was my turn. He's like, you're going to live.
Oh, my God.
It's just awful. So there's some things about the story that I thought were, like, really cool. So it takes place over, I think, about 4 days. And one of the things that's cool is she gets very smart about how she's going to get herself rescued.
Like, play this.
Right. So when they need supplies, like, he takes her to this remote cabin and they need, you know, food. So every time she sends him to the store, she asks him for something that only her mother ever asked for at the store. And, like, one is a set of curtains with a gold thread through it. And, like, when he asks about it, like, the woman realizes, like, something's up here. But in the meantime, so there's this scene where he's barreling back to the cabin, but by this time he's bought her, like, a Disney princess dress, and he said, your name's not Doris May Withers, your name is Christabel, and you're the Queen of England. And then they do this whole montage this whole like kind of montage of to this really bad 70s song called, I mean, must have written it for it. It's called Strangers on a Carousel. Folks, you have to go to YouTube and watch this.
Immediately.
It is so hilarious. But he barrels up. Oh no, during the montage, get this. So you know that he's like a total hipster because he's wearing like a top hat and he has like a pirate shirt and he's kind of dancing around the apartment, and then he's playing a recorder and she's dancing for him. So suddenly they're showing this moving into that they're in a relationship together.
Milady.
Yeah. He calls her Milady.
No.
He does. He calls her Milady. Yes. He calls her. By the way, that truck had no seat belts. Like I was just like total.
It's the 70s.
I know there are no seat belts.
What's a seatbelt?
So he calls her Milady. He wears a pirate shirt and a top hat, and he plays a recorder for her to dance for.
No.
Okay, so the thing is also, Linda Blair is doing like this really bad Southern accent. So I'm is all and who are you? Who are you? I'm Christabel. It's so awful.
Which is weird, right? Belle, Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, exactly. Stockholm Syndrome. But
Let's Dance. Oh.
So I'm not sure about what the rights are, because if I knew I could put the song up, I would put the song up because it's hysterical, but I can't. So maybe I'll put some music underneath this that's hokey.
We'll look into
that. One of the lines from the hokey 70s song is, "She was young and kind of pretty." It's like, well, that's damning with faint praise. But so at the end of it is like, so he's barreling up and he's like, "You got me in trouble, you," and he's like throws her to the ground. She's like, "That was before I fell in love with you, you big oak, you big dope," or something like that. And she goes, "I have a surprise for you, but no, I'm not going to give it to you. I made you an apple crumble. You think I don't like you if I make an apple crumble?" It's just the weirdest dialogue.
What the hell?
I know. So he goes, "Well, show it to me." And they go into the cabinet and she shoves a piece of paper in his face. He's like, "What is this? Look on the back." "What is it?" "It's a poem. I wrote you a poem." And she writes this poem called Cabin of the Dawn, and she's sitting down, she's all angry at the table, and she's going to read it to him, and then this flute music starts. Maybe it's a recorder, not a flute. So it's like a harp and flute music. And I'm going to do my dramatic reading of...
Please.
Okay, so...
I'm ready.
Cabin of the Dawn by Doris May Withers. My truck broke down when I was on my way home, and along came a man speaking in poems. I thought he was nuts when he called himself Kubla Khan, and he took me away to his cabin of the dawn. First I thought that I was in a terrible mess, but he's made me a lady, even bought me a dress. He's taught me all sorts of things. I don't know if I can get through this. From the very start, he opened my mind and gave wings to my heart. At first I just couldn't figure this funny man out. Then I realized he's teaching me what life's all about. Like wanting things enough to make them come true. I guess that's what he means by Xanadu. Not the roller skating musical movie. Okay. Life on the farm was almost like hell. Now I'm Queen of England and my name's Christabel. We dine on delicacies and plenty of fruit. And I dance for him as he plays me his flute. I think he's been awful lonely for a while and just needs a friend that can make him smile. What he doesn't know is he's got one in me, and together we make awful nice symmetry. And then what do you think happens next?
I can't even imagine.
Like all the police and deputies and the townsfolk come in and they shoot him. The townfolk. And then she runs to him and she's sobbing over his body, and she dabs the blood from his bullet wound onto her heart under her flannel shirt. I guess she took off her Christabel dress.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a piece of gold that is.
I gotta find the full movie. Now, in all seriousness, if we're going to bring it back to any kind of seriousness.
I honestly think we should end on this note.
Well, I mean, the idea is that, once again, it's like Jessa would say, it's fucking kidnapping, right? So that there's not really a trauma bonding, but, it's indicated that they had sex. So he had sex with a minor. So it's, that's wrong. And it also goes back to what you were talking about in Mary Kay Letourneau's episode about this grooming of, I'm going to show you the world. Look
Sure.
what he's done for me. He's taught me all about life.
Right.
I mean, that's grooming. Those are grooming behaviors.
Yeah, completely. That is just too good.
Yeah. There's also a really adorable young woman, teenager on YouTube. Her name is Eby, EBY. And for some reason, she popped up when you look for these videos. And I don't even know where she watched the full movie, but she's a sweet young woman, really funny, and she compares the book and the movie.
Really?
And she's really funny. She's a little off. I mean, she doesn't really get that there's a huge age difference, and that's completely inappropriate. Because he does look young. He doesn't look like he's 30-something, but...
if she's just comparing the two, that's her thing. That's so funny. Okay, new theme music.
Oh, how many...
Can you write me a poem, by the way? No one ever writes me a poem.
I'm going to write you a poem.
All right, we are ending there.
Now I'm just wondering how many listeners we're going to lose from my dramatic reading of that poem.
No, you're going to get requests to do more. Please, bonus episodes of Scott reading.
Scott just reading bad poetry in a Southern accent.
That was fun. That's such an interesting topic. I am actually presenting this topic at our crisis negotiation training that we have coming up. I thought two birds with one stone, let's
you got all your research.
Deep dive and go into it. And
do I get to come in and do the dramatic reading of this poem?
No.
Damn it.
I don't think the SWAT team would go for that.
Christabel.
They feel like, what the fuck is going on, Shiloh? You no longer can come out on our
I'm telling you, folks, Sweet Hostage, look it up, please. Just look it up and the post on the Facebook page what you think about the music video of Strangers on a Carousel.
Strangers on a Carousel. Cool. All right.
Good job.
Thank you for all that. I really thank you for that research. That was quite different than mine this week. All right. So stay tuned, folks. We got lots of cool things coming up. Please rate, subscribe on Apple iTunes. Give us a like and hit us up with stuff you want us to cover on our social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. And
look for some announcements for, like I was kind of dropping hints. We've got events happening this fall every month. 3 in Los Angeles, 1 on the East Coast.
I know.
We're very excited, but we'll announce it next time.
We're really looking forward to more live events to be able to connect with people. So until next time, we will see you on LA
Not So
Confidential.
Bye, folks. Bye.